The Renaissance. The Italian Renaissance occurred at around 1300 and lasted until the sack of Rome in 1527. The Renaissance did not spread to northern Europe until around 1450, and in England, the Renaissance did not take place until the 16th century. The spread of the Renaissance was partly due to Johann Gutenberg's invention of the movable printing press, so you can thank him for having to learn more about the Renaissance. Rise of the Italian city-states. During the 14th and 15th centuries, Italy was composed of city-states, each run by a signore, or a despot. For instance, one of the most powerful city-states in Italy during the Renaissance was Florence, with the Medici family dominating much of its politics. Two of the most influential members of the Medici family were Cosimo de' Medici, who was the most powerful of the rulers, and Lorenzo de' Medici, who was a significant patron of the arts. Another important city-state in Italy during the Renaissance was the Duchy of Milan, ruled by the Sforza family, and a common enemy of Venice and Florence. Since the political tension was high between the two states, the Peace of Lodi was established to create peace, the main reason behind it being concerns of the growing Ottoman Empire in the east. However, Milan's despot, Ludovico the Moor, eventually got too power-hungry, and, breaking the Peace of Lodi, allowed France to invade Naples, a traditional enemy of Milan. The Medici family tried to appease France, only to get overthrown. Not wanting to miss out on the action, Spain joined the escalating battles in Italy against France, and soon Italy became a battleground for the two empires. The Emperor of the Holy Roman Empire, Emperor Charles V, who conveniently happened to be the King of Spain, sent soldiers to protect the Pope. However, the French troops never came, so the soldiers, feeling bored, decided that it would be a great idea to sack Rome, consequently ending the Italian Renaissance in 1527. Humanism. Humanism covers a broad variety of topics, but the basic theme was the betterment of the individual. It involved the theme of individualism, which was the belief that an individual was given great potential by God and should therefore strive to be the best possible version of themselves that they could possibly be. Another theme was secularism, which was the idea that instead of living and understanding life in terms of religion and the Catholic Church's doctrine, people should look at things logically and immerse themselves with topics that did not involve religion. Stemming from this idea was classicism, which was where scholars decided that they felt the need to look at ancient Latin and Greek works, just for old time's sake. Another branch of humanism was civic humanism, which was the idea that education should prepare leaders to be active in their civil affairs. Now, because remembering all these terms for the AP exam wasn't enough, we have to know some of the important people that fall under these branches. First off was Petrarch, also known as the father of humanism. He's pretty important and makes frequent appearances on the AP exams, so you should probably know his name. Next was Leonardo Bruni. He was the first to term humanism, and was one of the most important civic humanists. Another figure was Lorenzo Valla, who wrote the Elegances on the Latin language to show everyone just how well he knew the Latin language. He also wrote on the false donation of Constantine, where he claimed that the donation of Constantine in the 8th century was a fraud. If that didn't expose the Catholic Church enough, he also wrote the Latin Vulgate, which pointed out the errors in the authorized version of the Bible used by the Church. In addition, Pico della Mirandola wrote the Oration on the Dignity of Man, which claimed that since humans were created by God, they were given great potential. Another famous Renaissance man was Niccolo Machiavelli, who wrote The Prince. This just said that for a ruler to rule successfully, they must take whatever means necessary, stating the ends justify the means. It was better to be feared than loved, and other inspiring quotes like that. Finally, we'll have Baldassare Castiglione, who wrote the Book of Courtier. This was basically a book of manners, with a description of the perfect Renaissance man. Italian Renaissance art. One important aspect of the Italian Renaissance art was the topic of patronage. In simple terms, this is when rich families paid famous artists to draw either themselves or create something that would show other people just how wealthy they were. For instance, the Medici family and the Catholic Church were significant patrons of the arts during the Renaissance. Renaissance artists also moved on from drawing like grade school students to painting lifelike masterpieces, utilizing geometric perspective, which was giving 3D effects on 2D surfaces, chiaroscuro, which was using dark and light colors to create the illusion of depth, sfumato, the technique of blurring edges, and contrapposto, a design on statues where the figures stand leaning towards one side more than the other, and not like an added tension creep. Some famous Florentine Renaissance artists include Filippo Brunelleschi, who constructed the Il Duomo on top of Santa Maria del Fiore, Lorenzo Ghiberti, who created the famous Gates of Paradise, Donatello, who created the statue of David, and Sandro Botticelli, who painted Venus, the Roman goddess of love. Soon, along came the High Renaissance, because apparently one Renaissance wasn't enough for the Italians. Leonardo da Vinci drew the famous Mona Lisa, implementing the sfumato technique. Raphael Santi painted the School of Athens, which displayed scholars in a Greco-Roman building, discussing math, science, and other educational subjects. Michelangelo Buonarroti, not to be outdone, sculpted the David and the Pieta, and designed the dome on top of St. Peter's Basilica. The Northern Renaissance. Because Northern Europe stayed more religious, the Renaissance brought on Christian humanism, which contained the same central themes as the Italian Renaissance, but emphasized early church writings to provide answers on how to improve society as well as how to reform the church. One prominent Christian humanist was Erasmus, who wrote in praise of folly. This was a bestseller that criticized the immorality and hypocrisy of the church leaders and the clergy. This work heavily influenced Martin Luther, author of the 95 Theses, but that's information for some time in the future. Another significant figure was Thomas More, who wrote Utopia, a work describing the perfect utopian society on an imaginary island. Michel de Montaigne was known to have developed the lovely essay form, so you can thank him for all the essays that you will ever have to write. He also formed the idea of skepticism because he doubted that true knowledge could be attained and believed that people should be cautious, critical, and suspend judgment. Finally, there is one of the greatest English Renaissance authors, William Shakespeare, who is either hated or loved by modern students. And of course, what's Northern Renaissance without more confusing art terms? The North developed the Flemish style, which included more minute details and emotions than Italian Renaissance art, as well as more use of oil paints, in contrast to Italian tempera. One famous Northern Renaissance artist was John van Eyck, who perfected oil paintings and wood panel paintings. He constructed the Ghent altarpiece and painted Arnolfini and his wife. Another popular artist you should know is Peter Bruegel the Elder. He was known for paintings that depicted the lives of ordinary people, as seen in Peasant Dance, Peasant Wedding, and the battle between Carnival and Lent. And just because history loves even more complicated details, Germany also had its own pronounced artists. For instance, Albrecht Dürer was the master of woodcuts, constructing works such as Adam and Eve, Night, Death and Devil, and the Four Apostles. Another popular German artist was Hans Holbein the Younger, who painted numerous portraits of officials and painted the ambassadors. One patron family from northern Germany that you should know is the Fugger family. Women during the Renaissance era. While women during the Renaissance did not have nearly as many rights or opportunities as men did, they did enjoy increased access to education. However, some argue that women in the Renaissance lost status compared to women in the Middle Ages, for during the Renaissance, women were merely viewed as ornaments to their husbands, and many thought that they should only serve to please their husbands. One important female figure during the Renaissance was Christine de Pizan, a noble lady who wrote The City of Ladies and the Book of Three Virtues. These works provided a chronological list of all accomplishments achieved by women, and basically served as a survival manual for women. Another significant person was Isabella d'Este, who was considered to be the first lady of the Renaissance. She was a major patron of the arts and ruled Mantua after her husband's death. D'Este also set an example for women on how to break away from their traditional roles as ornaments to their husbands. Witch hunts. There are numerous movies revolving around the concept of witch hunts, so let me ruin the joy of these movies with a few historical facts. Cunning folk were common in European villages, and these people often helped the community they were in. However, because the Catholic Church wanted to gain more control over these rural villages, because why not, they claimed that the powers of these cunning folk came from the devil and established witch hunts to gain control. Women were often subjected to these hunts more often because superstition stated that they were weaker vessels and more prone to temptation. As a result, women, especially those who were older and widowed, constituted most of the victims. The witch hunts eventually came to a close as a result of the scientific revolution, which increasingly discredited superstition. But that's a lesson for another time.